All right, guys, we're back. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy CMB checking in. And guys, I was on Facebook. I was on World Boxing News' Facebook page, and I saw this post here about Juan Manuel Marquez. You guys know Marquez is a former Mexican boxer. He was a four-division champion, and in here he was talking about YouTubers and content creators ruining the sport of boxing. Now, he says here, Juan Manuel Marquez blames the current trend of YouTubers and influencers entering the boxing ring. I want to make that clear. He's talking about the ones that enter the ring for the decline in popularity among today's new fans. Marquez said that they turned boxing into sterner words that can't be repeated. Okay, so I don't know what he said. I don't know if this is a quote or not, but this is what's being reported on World Boxing News. Let me say this. I think that YouTubers and content creators entering the ring, I would say it's a double-edged sword. I would say in defense of that, it did help to bring new eyes to the sport. A lot of casuals, you guys know boxing is a business, and for it to thrive, you have to constantly bring in new people to generate revenue. And we know that boxing has been on the decline as of late. So I can understand why some of these platforms would entertain that stuff. On the flip side, I think it's done a disservice to boxing because these guys are being legitimized over real fighters, over guys who've been in the sport their entire lives, starting out as children, and they aren't getting the shine that they deserve. I think that's the bad thing, and we're holding these other guys up in high regards, guys like Jake Paul. Jake Paul's was on Netflix. He was seen all around the world in a boxing ring. And, we don't get that from the guys that hardcore boxing fans want to see. We don't get that. But I would say a lot of the blame goes to the platforms, to some of the sanctioning bodies for the things that they've been doing for years. The platforms, I would say, not working with each other, not trying to create the best fights that the fans want to see. I think that played into a lot of the decline of the sport. Fans wanted these big fights. They didn't want to make them because they didn't want to play with the other side of the street. That type of stuff. And that kind of just ruined it for a lot of boxing fans. They started to turn to the UFC. You guys know the popularity of the UFC was on the rise, and it pretty much, I would say, took the popularity from the sport of boxing. Now, as far as the sanctioning bodies goes, I think a lot of times playing favoritism contributed to the decline of the sport. Not having the same rules applying to everyone. Different strokes for different folks, and that left a bad taste in a lot of fighters' mouths, as well as some of the boxing fans who actually follow the sport. They just kind of threw their hands up, and they were just kind of tired of the shenanigans. So it's just been a perfect storm for guys like Jake Paul to come in and make a lane in the sport of boxing. Did Jake Paul ruin the sport? No. I just think he was an opportunist, and he took advantage of that opportunity that presented itself. So in a sense, I just think Marquez is putting the blame in the wrong direction. I don't really think it's the YouTubers and the content creators who actually ruined the sport. I think it's the powers that be that were in control that actually helped to ruin the sport of boxing by not only allowing this stuff, but creating the perfect storm for this stuff to take place. Now we have Zuffa boxing, and I think Turki Al Sheikh I think a lot of stuff's going to be corrected now. You're going to get the best competition fighting the best competition. The guy has deep pockets. The old guard, they don't like this. I like some things, but with Zuffa and some things I don't like. I do like having 4 belts, but if they continue to be biased and rob the fighters, then it is what it is, in my opinion. Let Zuffa do his thing. Competition is good. I think it helps people correct themselves. Other platforms correct themselves. So we'll see. But I just don't want to blame YouTube and content creators getting in the ring for ruining the sport. We know who ruined the sport. The people at the top ruined the sport because they got greedy. But that's my take on it, guys. You guys let me know what you think about what Juan Manuel Marquez had to say about this. Do you agree that YouTubers like Jake Paul entering the sport ruined it? Or do you think, what I think, that it was the establishment, the powers that be, that ruined the sport? Let me know in the comment section, guys. It's the CMB. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. And I'm out. Peace.